Hey, Billy, thanks for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing good, Jeff. How are you?
Good. So I was looking this up and, I identify you as a former Sixers GM, former Nets GM, but you kind of got your starting coaching on the bench for Larry Brown in Indiana with the Pacers. Why did you not become and stay in coaching?
Well, I started actually in college when I was 23 at Illinois State, and then joined Larry because Larry recruited me when he was at Kansas, and I chose Duke over Kansas, but I remained friendly with him when the opportunity arose to join his staff. I think I was 27, and it was kind of odd to be coaching people that were older than I was, but I enjoyed it from the Byron Scotts, and it was about teaching and I spent a lot of time watching film and explaining to the guy, so they came to me like, what play is that? What are they going to do? So it was fun. And when Larry left Indiana, he came to Philadelphia and he had total control. And he said to me, you can be my GM and run the front office like Donnie Walsh in Indiana, or you can be my top assistant. And I always felt like I can always be a coach, but I may never get this opportunity to go in the front office. So I chose the front office, and that's how I ended up going into the front office. And I was blessed to have two great people working for me or with me. I'd say Kevin O'Connor ended up becoming Utah GM, and Tony DeLeo, who was there for a long time. And they were older, but they helped taught me the game. And Andy Spicer, the CFO, was the capologist. So I spent a lot of time with them and learning the cap. And so it was a great transition for me. Coaching, I enjoyed it. I still did a lot of the coaching with Larry when we were together. We talked plays, and he said, "Remember that play we ran against the Knicks in '90, in '94, '95, and we started diagramming." So I did do a little bit of the coaching.
Why not go back to it? So when you leave the Nets, why did you, if you loved it, why not go, all right, I'm going to get back into coaching? Or were you just at a different point in life with family and kids that you were just, I don't want to go through this anymore?
Well, I mean, I was a little bit that because I had a family and young kids, and but yeah, Rick Carlisle, when I was out of in between Sixers and Nets, he approached me about joining his staff. And so, as I always do, have done since my career, I approached Coach K and said, "Here's what I'm offered." And he thought about it. I was down there for his camp, and he thought about it. And after 2 days, he says, "Nope, you're management." He goes, "That's your role, you know, so don't go into coaching." So I called Rick and said, "Okay, I'm not going to go into coaching." I didn't tell him why, but that's really why Coach K felt that I was better in leadership. I mean, he thought I could be a good coach, but he says, "You're good at management. Stay there."
Yeah. And now tell me what you're doing now. So you're the senior partner at Modern Executive Solutions. What is that? Tell me about that, because, you're doing sports talk radio for a while, you're doing some other things, but what is this specifically?
Well, basically, what it is, an executive search firm, and we do C-level suite placement, and it's based in Atlanta. And so my job basically is take all my experience of hiring for those jobs or doing those jobs is helping place candidates. If the Sixers needed a team president or wanted a GM, they could hire us as a firm, and we could help them place it. If St. Joe's or Villanova needed an athletic director or a coach, they can hire our firm. And basically, we do a lot of, I always thought of search firms that just, get a bunch of names and here's some candidates, but it's a lot more work to it. It's a lot more, psychometrics and assessments and things go into it, and do a lot of background and research. And so now that I'm on the other side, I never use one. If I ever got back into as a GM or president, I would use a search firm because they do a lot of the work for you. They do a lot of the digging and find out, and then they help you find candidates that you may not find. And that's the really reason I got into it. There are a lot of people that are, working their butts off and they don't know how to get to that next level. So I've talked to a lot of different candidates and given them advice and how to get, prepare themselves, but also I want to try to find those people that are just working and, don't know how to get to that next level, whether it be football. With this job, I've talked to presidents of football teams, NFL. I've talked to GMs of baseball teams. I've talked to athletic directors, team presidents, agents. I mean, I've been talking to the gamut of people, and it's fun to talk to a lot of them. And I've learned a lot about different sports. I'm going to go visit some different training camps. Going to an NFL coming up. I'll visit some ADs. So it's basically, and I'd say I want to just help you solve a problem. That problem may be hiring a coach or maybe doing an assessment of your leadership team. So it's exciting, and the firm is doing it differently than any other firm that I've ever been involved with, that I've ever heard about. I mean, just from the standpoint, 10% of the revenues they're giving to charity. It's already donated $1 million last year to charity for underserved youth. It's focusing on diversity. 70% of our candidates we've placed are diverse candidates. 80% of our workforce is diverse, whether it's gender or ethnic diversity. So they've looked at it and said, we want to approach it differently. And one of the things also, they hold back a little bit of the fee so that the client's relations, so the clients are pleased. So they went into it not to make it transactional. They wanted to do it, how do we help solve a problem and where everybody feels good about it? So that's really why I joined Modern. And it's been fun. It's a lot of work, and you get frustrated at times because you just keep making calls. But I think the way we're going to do it, and I'm going to do it, it's going to work.
Yeah. Do you miss running a NBA team, or did it become a point of frustration with just how tough it is? I don't think people understand just how tough that business is. You're dealing with so many personalities and so many moving parts, and it's a difficult job.
Well, Danny Ferry, my good friend, when he took over Cleveland, he said to me, because Billy, people don't see you on the road. You got to be out and scouting. I said, Danny, I look at my job as to manage the personnel, just like you said. I got to manage the coaches. I got to manage the players, because at any moment it could blow up and you could lose 3 or 4 games. So I felt I was always needed to be around to manage that and had other people do the scouting. And that's what Ed Snyder taught me. He goes, let the scout scout. And then when Danny got to Cleveland, he realized, he goes, you're right. You've got to be in the office and you can't be can't be out. So I do miss it at times. What I miss the most is the player interaction. I enjoyed spending time talking to players. I still talk to a lot of players. It's Kyle Korver or Darren Williams or Lou Williams, Thad Young. I stay in contact, Brooke Lopez. I stay in contact with all those guys, because that was the best part of the job, was dealing with the people. As a general manager, that is your job, is to manage the personalities. Everybody looks at it, the trades and the cap management and all that. That's a big part of it, but you have a staff to help you with that. Really, it's about managing the personalities and being there for them, because these are humans, and
Yeah.
they have the same ups and downs that everyone else has, or problems at home. So you got to be there to listen and talk them through their problems and help them be able to go out and perform well.
How tough was it managing Allen Iverson? I mean, look, I loved watching him play, and I don't think there's a person on this earth that would say they didn't like watching AI play. But, there's a lot of things obviously behind the scenes. Was that difficult? You talk about managing personalities. Was that tough? You have arguably the biggest star in the NBA, biggest star in Philadelphia, and there was a lot of things going on.
Well, the greatest thing about Allen, he has a big heart. And I understood that. And he and I got to become pretty close. At times, we have difficult conversations that got heated? Yes. But I think he knew where I was coming from was for love for him. Everything I was trying to do was not to hinder him from being the best he could be. It was trying to put him in the best light to be able to perform. So there were days I'd leave and think, oh my God, what a day that was. But I'd get up the next day, and as soon as I see him, the big smile on his face, and we'd talk. So that to me was the enjoyable part, because Allen, not once in my time with him did he ever come and say, go get this guy, I need this. Or every season he would say, this is the best roster, these are the best teammates, because he believed in his abilities, that whoever we gave him, he believed he could win with. So he never once said, these guys can't play, or you got to go get me this guy or that guy. He was ready to go to war with whoever was, suited up to play with him, because he felt, give me 4 of the guys on the court and I can win with them. That's how much belief he had in his abilities. He didn't look at it and say, I got to go play someplace else to win a championship. He always wanted to try to do it here.
Yeah, and one of the stories I loved about Allen Iverson is that you had to hide his jersey, that number 3 Sixers jersey, from him at times when he was injured and wanted to play. And, look, you go back to the managing, you're trying to manage his team for the long haul and obviously for each season, but you have to take Allen's jersey and hide it. I mean, tell me a moment where you're literally going, this is ridiculous. I have to hide another man's jersey in the locker room.
I think the game was in New York one time, and he wanted to play desperately because obviously he's at the Garden, but he was hurt and couldn't play. And so I remember telling our equipment, Scotty, I said, Scotty, you got to hide the jersey. I said, because if he gets it, he's going to put it on and it'll be a fist fight not to let him play. And that time he found the jersey, but he didn't have shoes. So he was telling the ball boy to run to Foot Locker to get him some shoes, to get him some Reebok so he could play. But that was him. He wanted to play every chance he got. He didn't, practice wise, that was in his mind, he needed to heal his body because he was playing 42 minutes a night. So he looked at it as like, I'm here, but I just can't get banged up because we play again tomorrow night. And it got more blown up, more so. I think Larry talked about it a lot more. And that's what's frustrated Allen, because he was giving us everything he had in the games. And he just said, if we play Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I can't give you every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I can give it to you on those game days. And so, but he was, as frustrating as it was at times, he was a joy to be there, because you knew every night he gave you a chance to win because he was going to give everything he had on that court.
Yeah, and you look back at the 0-1 finals, and look, I think on paper, the Lakers had maybe more firepower, but you saw that grit and almost like a true Philadelphia story. You saw that grit and determination from Iverson and Eric Snow and that entire cast. And it almost goes, man, what if they pulled that off against the Lakers?
Yeah, no, and we won game one, and it was like, okay, and then game two, we were right there. Even game three, I thought we had a chance. And that season, I don't remember, but Allen was hurt. Aaron McKee was hurt and Eric Snow was hurt. They all needed surgery when the season was over. I would have liked to have played them healthy because our guys were playing a little banged up. The Lakers were, they were a dynamic franchise at that time, but our guys didn't look at it that it was David and Goliath. They looked at it like, hey, we can compete with these guys, and healthy. It would have been nice to play them healthy.
Yeah. Is that one, I don't say call it a regret, but is that one of the biggest things in your career that you look back as a GM, president, and go, man, if I could have just won with that team, or that kind of window per se you had with Philadelphia?
Yeah, I mean, because that was a magical year. And even in that year when Theo got hurt, he broke his wrist. I remember Larry, because Larry wanted to make the trade from Mutombo earlier in the year, and we were playing great. And I was like, you don't want to mess with it. But once Theo got hurt, we realized you don't get this opportunity too often to have a chance to get to the finals. And that's really why we made the trade, because I didn't know when Theo was going to get back and how long it was going to take him to get back in the flow. So we made the trade from Mutombo, because when you get that chance, you've got to go for it. You've got to do everything you can, because it doesn't happen often that you can go back to the finals. If you go back to Oklahoma City when they had, Harden and Durant and Westbrook, and they got to the finals, they're going to win a bunch of championships. And a short time later, the whole team was gone. And so I think about that, the Laker finals in 2001 over and over. I see highlights and think if we just could have, Matt Geiger played in game one with a bad knee, and then game two, he couldn't play anymore. So, because we felt you needed to have 18 fouls at least with Todd McCullough, Mutombo, and Matt Geiger to go against Shaq. And Matt gave us that the first game, but he couldn't give it to us in the second game.
I remember when Mutombo comes in, it's basically almost like the sense of, hey, we're going to bring him in to eventually go up against Shaq. That was kind of maybe the matchup. And I remember him being asked about facing Shaq, and he goes, it's not going to be a walk in the cake. And he kind of mixed up the two phrases a little bit, and he kind of combined them. And I love that. I always remember that about Dikembe Mutombo. And so when you talk about making trades as a GM, you hear about it all the time, signings and trades. So like, walk me through a typical trade. Like, are you just picking up the phone going, I want that guy? Like, what is the art of making a trade as a general manager?
Well, with the Atlanta one, it started, I want to say, in December, and we kept talking, going back and forth. They weren't sure if they wanted to trade him, and we would go back and forth. And then it got to the point when Theo got hurt, it got a little more serious. And we said, all right, would you do this? And go, yeah, but I couldn't put this guy in the deal. And then they take a guy out, and with the NBA and the cap, you've got to make the numbers work.
Right.
And so we'll add this guy, and they said, well, okay, I like that guy. Would you put a pick? No. So you go back and forth on it. Sometimes it happens quickly, like, sometimes it takes a lot longer, or they may say, we don't want the guys you're sending. And so then you got to find a place for the guys that you want to trade. So you call another team that may, you have notes and you say, okay, this team wants these two guys. And so that team says, yeah, we'll take these two guys. What are you going to give? All right, I'll give you a first and this. And you go back to the other team. Would you take a first and this? And they go, yeah, but I don't want this guy. Okay, I'll keep that guy. Would you take this guy? And so you keep moving pieces in and out, and you keep the main part, but you add other pieces to make the deal work. I know when we almost traded Allen the one year, it was in the off season before 2001, and I think the deal, it was like,
wait, you almost traded Allen before 01?
Yeah, in the off season. In the
Okay.
off season, we were, at that point, it's like, okay, Larry, we just, it wasn't going to work. So we had a deal on the table that took weeks to get. And
Oh, is that
it
the
was
one that Matt Geiger shut down?
Yeah,
Okay, I
because
remember now. Okay.
Yeah, so but it ended up being, I think, 18 players and 4 different teams, and so every day I would get it. Back then it was fax or an email. Fax everybody a copy of it. Here's what the deal is, the numbers and the players, and one team would say, well, I don't want that guy, and you go back and rework it and you send it out again, and it finally got to the point where everybody agreed, okay, this works. And Detroit said, well, wait a minute, you've got guys in the deal that we're announcing that we're getting rid of because we're signing Chucky Atkins and Ben Wallace, and it won't work unless Matt Geiger waives his trade kicker. And so I remember having a conversation with David Falk, and he says, Bill, I think it was like $1.5 million. He says, I can't recommend to do that, but I'll ask him. And then Matt said no, and that's how the deal fell apart. And it was all because, and I kept saying, Detroit, you have a chance to get Allen Iverson, you want to over Ben Wallace and Chucky Atkins, and Ben Wallace is now a Hall of Famer. But that was that. I mean, you go back and forth with numbers, and you rework deals to make it all work. And sometimes the deal doesn't work. It's off by $20,000 when you get there, and you sit there and and you try to figure it out. And you say, we can't do it because it's $20,000.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a pain in the butt, to be honest.
And you sit there and you go, are you kidding me? We can't make this deal work for $20,000. And you try to rework it, and sometimes you don't have players you want to put in the deal, or they don't want it because the salary's too big. So it can be frustrating, and that's sometimes when you're doing signings in the offseason, like now with James Harden, you wait on the timing of it, because when you sign him, his number goes in, so you hold off on signing that number till you know exactly if you're going to do any other trades. So and that's why Andy Spicer, the CFO, was the cap guy, because he was helping. He was good at working the numbers. He would send it back, and I'd say, all right, take this guy out and put this guy in, and I think it works on my end. And he goes, we're off by another $10,000, and all right, add this guy, put this guy out. And it works. And you go to the team, they go, no, we don't want to do that. And so then you got to start all over again.
Yeah, and you almost landed Tracy McGrady, right? And to pair with Allen Iverson.
Yeah. We agreed the night before, and that's what happens a lot of times. You agree to a deal and you want to sleep on it. So Tracy McGrady was going to be a free agent, and Toronto said, look, we'll give you McGrady in a first. I'm not sure. I think Jerry Stackhouse was going to be, or Larry Hughes. Larry Hughes was going to go to Toronto. And I said, yeah, we'll do it. And sorry, let's sleep on it and we'll talk in the morning. But in the meantime, I think Toronto had talked to their coaches, and one of their coaches had alerted Stephen A. Smith, who was here covering the Inquirer, and Stephen put it out there that this potentially happened. Toronto got a lot of heat up there, and they backed out of the deal. And Stephen always says, he goes, you should have told me. I would have never wrote it. I go, well, I didn't want to tell you, because then you might put it out there. So
you wonder about that tandem, Allen Iverson, Tracy McGrady. And look, obviously you have to sign him long term and make sure he stays, but you think about, man, what, and look, you can do that 1,000 different ways, looking back going, what if? And so what is your best trade? What is your worst trade, would you say you've made?
With the Sixers or overall?
Overall, as a GM.
Probably the two of the best ones probably was getting Mutombo.
Yeah.
Obviously, because I think that was a piece that we needed at that time. And and Eric Snow, because we traded a future second round pick to get Eric Snow. He was the fourth point guard on Seattle and wasn't playing. And the worst one was the Brooklyn trade with Boston.
But I don't get that. Like, I don't get that. So walk me through this. You look at you're bringing in 2 Hall of Famers, and at the end of the day, yeah, you're giving up future assets, but those future assets, to my recollection, didn't really amount to much in the sense of stars. You bring in 2 Hall of Famers. Okay, it doesn't work, but you're going for it.
Yeah, I mean, well, I say the worst because I think I probably, if I had to go back over, I would have taken the swaps out. The year that I think we had swap rates, the odd years that they got a pick. The picks itself, the 3 firsts, I was okay with. It was the swap rights. I think if I could have taken that out, it would have gave the team a little more protection there in those off years in case something happened. And at the time, the mantra was, we're going to do this for 2 years, and then we'd be under the cap, and we'd have a team that and then after a year, the owner decided that financially he didn't want to pay anymore, even after agreeing, and which is his right. And so that really derailed a lot of things there. But that was the mantra was we're going to be good for 2 years. We're going into Brooklyn. Let's get a team, and sold a lot of tickets. And I think if we could have kept the team together for 2 years, we'd been a playoff team, second round, possibly going to the conference finals. We were close the year before. And then you had cap space the year Durant and a bunch of guys are going to be free agents. So in order to attract free agents, you got to be a winning franchise. So I thought that was going to put us in a position. But that's where I say the worst, in the sense of I should have taken time. Like that night, we did it on draft night, and in the middle of the draft, and I should have said, let's talk in the morning. I want to think about this, and probably would have pulled the swap rights out.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because you look at that on paper and you're like, all right, well, yes, it didn't work, but it's like, all right, you make that trade maybe again, because when you're going for it, and the Phillies went through this, that they went for it, and Ruben Amaro, the GM at the time, took a lot of heat. And I'm like, you're in this window, you're trying to hang on and go for it. It's very risky to go the other way as well and go, I'm just going to blow something up. And I think that's really risky as well.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. When you're in the position, like you said, trying to win, and you have owners that are backing you, you do go for it. And at the time, you want to put yourself in a position to win, and getting those guys, they were going to be the supporting cast. As they said coming in, they told Brooke and Darren and Joe Johnson, our job is to support you guys and be role players. And then I forget, we were playing in Philadelphia, and when Brooke broke his foot, Lopez, who was the young center, so he breaks his foot, and now you take him out of the mix. We changed how we played a little smaller, shot more threes, but Darren Williams started that year injured, missed all of training camp. So those 2 guys are supposed to be the catalyst carrying it, and they really weren't. And so relied on a lot of the other. Paul had stepped up and played great. So it was a great experience, great learning experience. But I would have liked to have the chance to, okay, it didn't work, and that's one thing I admire about Pat Riley in Miami.
Right.
A lot of people give San Antonio credit, which obviously they deserve, but Pat Riley has built it, broken it down, rebuilt it, broken it down, rebuilt it, and broken it down numerous times. And that to me is the great thing, is when you build something and it doesn't work, is to try to fix it and redo it again. And so Pat has done it with Andy Ellisberg, their GM, numerous times. And this year, I think they had 9 players that weren't even drafted on their roster, and they had a very good team. So that's the fun part, is building. And when it doesn't work, okay, figure out how to fix it and start over again and rebuild it.
Do you think you'll get another shot to build the team again, or do you think that has sailed?
I think they've gone with a lot of younger people. I would love the opportunity, because I think my experience and knowledge, especially coming in, I would do it a lot different with staffing wise. But I would love the opportunity, because it's, I doubt if I'll get it, but it'd be fun, because the greatest thing about what I do as a leader is allow people to do their jobs. Tony DeLeo and his staff did a great job with the draft. It was my job to try to move up and down in the draft to get the players they wanted. And that's the same thing I try to do in Brooklyn, is, I put people in position and let them do their jobs, and then I manage the personalities and try to help them. But I have no regrets looking back on it because I think it was, I had fun. And all along, you said something earlier. The goal was to try to win, and
Yeah.
if you're trying to win, you've got to take chances. I think if you it's easy to sit there and say, "Yeah, I'm just going to be safe and have a team that's a playoff team and losing the first round." That's easy to do. But if you're trying to win, you've got to take risks and take chances. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, it's so hard. And you look at what the Sixers are doing, and have been doing the last couple of years, trying to find those right pieces. And I think back to kind of what you guys went through with Allen Iverson, trying to find that right piece that the Sixers are now doing with Joel Embiid. And maybe they have it in Harden. He's taking less money to stay. They have Doc Rivers, a great coach. I mean, do you think that the Sixers, the way they're kind of built right now, that they should win, that they're in this window? It's been a frustrating, obviously, few years for them.
The hardest thing in sports is when you have a playoff team is how do you get them to a championship level?
So how did these Sixers get to that?
It takes luck. I mean, I'll be honest, it's going to take luck. And when I say luck, it takes health. If you think back to the year that the ball bounced on the rim on how many times in Toronto, even that year, Joel was hurt before the playoffs. So if he's healthy going into the playoffs, is it a different story? Does it come down to game 7? So I think it takes luck because you got to be healthy. And Milwaukee this year, the defending and Chris Middleton gets hurt. And so now they're not the same team. So a lot of it is luck and health. But if Joel's healthy, if James, he doesn't have to get back to the James Harden of scoring 40 points. Like he said, he almost averaged a triple-double. He's a distributor. Now you need Tobias Harris to be more consistent. Need PJ Tucker to come in. They've got the pieces. It's going to take a lot of health and luck to overcome that because Brooklyn thought they had it, and health didn't help them. Boston this year, people early in the year thought they wrote them off, and they turned it around. So it is a lot of luck and a lot of guys sacrificing for the good of the team, because in order to win a championship, it can't be about any individual. It's got to be, I'll give up less so we can win. And that's really what I think this group is at now. They've got to sacrifice and say, it doesn't matter what any individual, because if you win, all the individuals have success. Think about the 2008 Phillies. They won it, and everybody remembers the Jimmy Rollins and Chase Utleys and Ryan Howards and Shane Victorinos and Cole. You remember all these guys, Joe Blanton, Jamie Moore. You remember all of them because they won. If guys would have been selfish about the individual stuff and they didn't win, you wouldn't remember the Joe Blantons. You would remember, Shane Victorino's grand slam. Those things stick with you because it's as a team they won, and you remember the moments. When they were down against the Dodgers and the big home run. So moments like that happens because they all sacrifice for the good of the team.
Yeah, Doc Rivers is being criticized, even again this year for not winning. And he was just, guys, it's so hard. You don't understand how hard it is. And so when you look at this kind of tandem now, I mean, do you think with a full season with Harden and Embiid, the Sixers are contenders?
They have yes. I think they're one of the teams in the East that can come out of the East. And I like the fact that they're going to have a full training camp. So they go in the season understanding, and the coaches right now, guarantee all season, they're spending what plays work with James Harden, what plays work better with Joel, where should we put Tobias? And so in that, rather than being on the fly, they'll go through it in training camp, and they'll have time to get their timing and their sync and understanding where each player likes the ball. So and that's what the team was going into the season without Ben. The guys figured it out and they were playing great. And then the trade happened, but you got to make that trade. And then they tried to do it on the fly. Very rarely you make a major trade, bring in a piece like that, and you win. If you go back and look at our overall record from the time we traded for Mutombo, we were below 500. Even though we got to the finals because we were on the fly getting him acclimated. And it just, it's hard because you don't have practice time.
Right. And then obviously Brooklyn, what's going to happen up there is a wild card that could blow up. Yeah. I mean, that could be a mess. And so what are your thoughts about what's going on with the Nets?
Well, it's frustrating because, I haven't been there. I'm a Philly guy. Now I've been here over 20 years. So I say I'm a Philly guy. but I lived in Brooklyn, and it's a great borough, great people, and I feel for them. Some of my friends there, I text them, said, I just think it's that's another situation where guys need to sacrifice. If I know Kyrie had his reasons where he didn't want to get the shot, but you sacrifice for the good of the team, and maybe it's a different situation. So it goes back to exactly what I said: is sacrificing for the good of the team and doing what's best to try to help the team win. And you can't think about your individual stuff. And I think right now they're all on different pages, and that's why it's not working. If they could all get on the same page and say, okay, it's about winning, they could be a pretty good team.
Yeah. And final thing for you, obviously you learned so much from Coach K, who you played for at Duke. It's going to be weird not seeing Coach K on the sideline. And I love the fact, by the way, when Larry Brown left Philadelphia, you called Coach K just to make sure he didn't want to come to Philadelphia to be a coach, right?
Yeah, I did, because when I had an opening, I didn't want him to say you should have called me. And then I said I didn't. So I called him, and I think he and his wife, they were headed on vacation. He says, no, I'm good at Duke. Looking back on it, I'm glad he did say that, because I don't know if I'd ever been allowed back to Duke if he would have came. But it will be weird just because he has been a mainstay in college basketball, especially at Duke. It's like when Dean Smith left Carolina. When people like that leave a profession, they leave a little bit of hole. But I think John Shire has stepped in and is doing great. Got to know my recruiting class, Derek Lively, whose mom worked for the Sixers, Kathy Drysdale, when I was there. And so it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting just to see the difference. But the great thing is John's part of the brotherhood. So a lot of the same things that, that we all are accustomed to will still be there, and Cameron will still be rocking. So I worry just for him, because it's the first time in 42 years he won't be sitting on the sideline at Duke. But I think it also gives him, just like Jay Wright, the chance to be able to do things in December and January with their wives, with Patty and Mickey, that they never been able to do. If they want to go on vacation, they can do it for the first time, 42 years for Coach K. He can say, let's go to Vegas, and they can go without, worrying about practice or anything like that. So as he told me after the Final Four, I was with him in his suite with my son Reggie, and he said, I'm ready. He goes, I don't want to have to worry about anybody else, and I have to worry about any kids' schedules. Or he goes, all I worry about now is my grandkids, my wife, and my daughters, and their happiness. And so for the first time, that's where he's fully consumed with his family.
Billy, I really appreciate the time. It was awesome hearing some of these old stories, some new ones, and your thoughts about what's going on in the NBA right now. I really appreciate the time.
You're welcome anytime.
Thanks, man. I appreciate